Thank you for joining us for another edition of One on One. On today's show, in the hot seat, we have Evelyn Wever-Croes, the leader of the MEP Party. Welcome, Evelyn.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
You're welcome. And now let's get right into it. I'd like to take a minute to acknowledge and recognize the fact that you are the first female leader within the two big political parties. With all colors aside, with all political parties aside, I want you to tell me, as a woman, how would a woman lead this island nation differently than a man? How would Evelyn lead this island differently than a man?
Well, to be very honest with you, I think the same as you run your home and the way we deal with the children and the priorities we have to set at home and the coin that we flip all sides a couple of times before giving it out. So I think it's more or less the same thing. You should put the priority on the people, the needs of the people, and not give everything away or the money away that quickly, you know, turn the coin around a couple of times. So basically that would be it, with the same passion, the same commitment as you would do at home, to do it in government.
Now, I like to bring up, it is a fact that in many parts of the world, including Aruba, that between men and women in executive positions and other positions, women make 25% lower wage than men. If you are elected and as a female leader, what are the policies that you would set in place to change this?
Well, first of all, we have to determine how this is measured, because it is not being discussed openly. It is not being pointed where the problem is. So I think in our program, ARUBA merece mejor, ARUBA deserves better, we have a platform in which we need to brainstorm on this first and then put systems in place where someone can come and complain about it, because that is the first thing we need to know. Where is the problem exactly, how is it happening, and how can we address it? So this center where you can come and complain, and it needs to be investigated, of course. You cannot go about complaining and accusing someone without investigating it. Mm-hmm. And then take efficient steps towards a solution. Once this system is in place, the ones that are abusing the system, you know, paying less for the same kind of work, they will know that they're being checked. And once they're being checked, we are sure that it will start going into the right direction. And then the next step would be investigate all the complaints and then take action on them.
Now, would you say this would be one of your political priorities in terms of social issues that women deal with, wage issues, things like this? Would this be a priority of yours, speaking to the female voters out there?
Yes, of course. In our program, we have 30 pages of suggestions and recommendations and plans. But we are now concentrating on 7 commitments, and one of them is on the social field, to eliminate the discrimination that still exists between men and women in the labor market, on the workforce, but also in general. There is still a discrimination between men and women in our laws. We still have some laws that include this discrimination. So we need to tackle this, and of course, being a woman in that position, that will be one of the priorities.
Okay, great. Now I want to move on to something. You used to be a tax lawyer. Mm-hmm. You had a very high position, and on several occasions in the public eye, you've talked about the deficit, the monetary funds, Fitch ratings, etc. I want to know how Evelyn would fix the deficit. What would you do if you are elected? Because you have talked about it on several occasions. What would you do? Okay,
the first thing that we will do, we will appoint a committee of experts, of local experts, that will make an assessment of the real situation. We do not know at this moment how big the problem is. We do not have all the figures and facts. So first, an assessment. Based on this assessment, they will make some recommendations, of course, in dialogue with us, recommendations, and these recommendations will be included in a national dialogue with all partners involved, with the parliament involved, with the government involved. And this group of people will then set the priority for especially the expenditures of the government in the first year. They will set the priority, which direction should we go. We will refinance the debt, the public debt that we have, refinance it against a lower interest rate. We now know that Holland will not help us anymore in going on the capital market because we are not in compliance with everything that the IMF and the Fitch and Standard & Poor's are stipulating. But there is still a market out there to go and refinance the debt. In the expenditures, we need to we need to set the priorities differently. We need to prioritize and really make the expenditures that are really needed at this point in time. Not so many travel expenses, party expenses as we call it, or all the coördinadornen as we call it, people that work with the ministers. It's an average of 100 per minister. That is not, all of that is not needed. We need to cut into those expenses first on the level of the ministers, and then according to our calculation, that will give us around 70 to 80 million a year additional. So if we can do that, then we do not need to go to the people of Aruba to ask them, to pay more taxes or to pay anything additional. That is the way we plan to do it in expenditures. And in the income side, we need to structure it because our tax system is outdated, it is very complicated, and there are huge arrears. And it's all interconnected. So we need to simplify it. It needs to become more transparent and simpler. Simplify so the government can get its share in the tax revenues on time, and the people know what they have to pay and how they have to pay it. And if you need to get your tax money in return, you will get it in return, even faster perhaps than you have to pay it. So it needs to be a fair system, but above all transparent and simplified.
Now, you had just mentioned a way it was cutting back, so to speak. Do you have a third economic pillar? Because the current party talks a lot about the green initiative, sustainability. What are your plans in terms of a third economic pillar to gain profit? Okay,
first of all, we have the tourism, and that is that is what is keeping us alive on this island.
Right.
The second is the refinery that is closed. So, and we think we can reopen it, and we will do all the efforts to reopen it. The third is what the government is calling the green energy. In reality, this is a very this is something long term, and we need to do something in between. We need to do something now because we cannot wait until those revenues start coming in. We on the energy side, we propose to buy energy from Colombia, hydro energy, and through a cable, a submarine cable from Colombia to Aruba, and that is around 120 to 130 kilometers of longitude. And the sea is not even very deep, so it is all feasible. Through that cable, import the electricity, the energy, and then have it distributed on the island. That will cut our costs in energy with 50%. So that will halve the costs we have now, and that automatically will give more space to the current economic pillars, but especially the new ones. And what do we want to do? We want to incorporate like a development bank where everybody can come, and the development bank will help you set up your business. We are thinking about cultivating shrimps or planting, or producing our own plastic cups or foam cups, things like that. You come to this development bank, and they will not just lend you the money. No, they will make sure that you become a successful entrepreneur. So they will teach you, and you will learn everything about labor law, payroll, cesantia, everything that not everybody knows, but is very necessary to run a business. They will lend you the money, they will hold your hand, and then they will let you go step by step, and at a certain point you're totally, completely independent. It's your business, it's your fabric, you will do everything in it, and you can employ more people, 10, 15 people. So and if we have a couple of those, then that will generate, of course, more labor or employment possibilities.
So this plan of yours would require the people of Aruba to be on board as well?
Of course.
To have a diversified third economic pillar?
Of course.
Okay, from what I see within the tourism sector, let's get back to that for a minute, there have been a few levies and taxes implemented within the last few years. And how would you say this affects the competitiveness of Aruba? Like you just mentioned, tourism is our source right now, our primary source. If you were elected, would you put more burden on this sector? What is your perspective on that?
To be very honest, I'm very concerned about the levying and the increase in the burden on the tourism sector. We would like to see an investigation being done, but an in-depth investigation on how this affects our competitiveness. I'm not sure how much it will affect it. I hear people complaining, others do not complain. Some tourists complain, others do not complain.
True.
So it's very difficult for us, not having a very good research done, in giving judgment on the weight of these measures that have been taken. So first of all would be an in-depth research to see how this really is affecting. In the case that it confirms what we feel, that the burden is too high, we need to change it. We need to shift it. We think that there are some possibilities to do that. Of course, you need to also be in dialogue with the hotel sector and see how to do that. But first, we need to really do some research on this before we do anything else. We need to keep in mind, though, that the IMF in the last report of August of this year, they have also spent some attention on the tourism sector, although that is going, much better than the other economic pillars we have on the island. And as the IMF says, it's due to the tourism sector that we have survived the crises we have survived, endured the crises. But we need to keep in mind that the tourism sector in this area is almost saturated.
Right.
So we need to do something different. And we are not doing something different. We're doing the same thing, and we are imposing a higher burden. So I'm concerned, but still we need to do some research.
Okay, very quickly, Evelyn, I want you to tell me, if MEP is not elected into office for this next term, I want you to tell me, what does the future hold for Evelyn?
If the MEP is not elected and we are in opposition again, I will assume my responsibility in opposition again and do it all over again. It's my commitment towards the people of Aruba. And I do not think that the first election can determine whether I should stay in politics or not. The people of Aruba, I think that by this point I have convinced the MEP supporters that a woman can do this. But I still need to convince the people of Aruba that a woman can lead the country. And I do not think that if it's not, if I do not achieve this in the first election, that I should quit. I'm not a quitter. Then again, I also need to be open and to listen to what the people want. If the people really do not want a woman in that position, or if the people really do not have the confidence in me doing the job, I will have to make a decision and not stay in politics, which will not be a very big problem for me. I have my career waiting, I have my family, I would like to have some private time and free time, but this first election will not be the one determining whether I would leave politics. So I'm here for a couple of years.
Great. Thank you so much, Evelyn, for coming on OneOnOne today.
Thank
and
you.
Thank you for joining us. And be sure to register to vote, or you don't really have the right to complain. Be sure to tune in for the next edition. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.